He's muted. You want to tell him?
Okay.
There it is.
We're live again. I'll let Mr. Scott first off, or Mr. Eccles. Could you disclose, you said that there was a request made for these drainage plans and that I'd ordered them to be produced. Can you just share screen that order so I can see it?
Y'all, Rob, can you put up request? I guess it's Exhibit 91, page 17, please.
The judge was actually asking for the order, Joe, first.
Well, the request is fine.
And then I'll show you the order, Your Honor. Paragraph 21 asks for the complete construction and project file for the project.
Okay.
And in addition, Rob, if you don't mind, go down to 23, please. Please produce any documentation that substantiates or supports the amounts listed on the draw request. They've submitted draw requests for all payments for all these plans. And now, if you don't mind, show Exhibit 24, which is the court's order.
Joe, before you do that, if we could go back for a minute, there was also a request that they produce all of the communications between the clients that is relative to this new email that we're seeing, this exhibit that was never produced to us in discovery.
I think we're talking about the drainage plan right now, so.
Okay, Your Honor.
This is your order, Your Honor. If you go to the next page, please, Rob.
Oh.
I'm sorry, I need Exhibit 91. No. Excuse me, Exhibit 24, please. Exhibit 24. And here's your order, next page. And just blow up that order, please.
Okay.
And so we think we clearly asked for this. It both is part of the project or construction file, and it's also a part that supports their draw request because it was bought and paid for by my client through the loan, our clients. So it should have been produced, and it should have been produced with all the specificity that you ordered, which includes identifying documents in response to our request, which they never did, and along with metadata, which they never provided.
Okay.
Your Honor, we also have, if Your Honor would like to see it, 2 exhibits from the Fifth Court of Appeals as to how those mandamus proceedings were discussed.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay, so Rob, would you please pull up P38?
Okay.
And P39. Your Honor, just let us know when we should go to the next page.
Next page. Okay. All righty. Ms. Pettit?
Yes, Your Honor. Actually, Mr. Urtiago is going to argue this issue if Your Honor will allow.
Okay.
Judge, I just want to let you know I'm in physical possession of the drainage plans that we're talking about. So it's an actual document that exists. It's in my physical possession. Of course,
Okay.
The issue is why hasn't this document been produced prior to today? I want to have just 2 subjects or 2 broad responses to that. The first one, of course, is that what they have shown you is not a specific request for a drainage plan. I understand their argument, which is, well, this should be a part of this larger category of documents called the construction file. That's not a legal term of art. There is no legal term of art of construction file that says drainage plans. I understand their contention, which is, well, the language, just the everyday use of the language is broad enough to capture these plans. Your Honor, I would respectfully submit that they are not. There's been a lot of confusion on both sides, Mr. Zatoun as well as Versailles, about exactly what documents have been produced and when. As Your Honor has witnessed in cross-examination, when we asked Mr. Zatoun if he had seen those drainage plans with the city of Dallas, which they had been filed in order to get the permitting, his response was equivocal and kept saying, well, I looked at permitting files, but nonetheless, he still testified to Your Honor that those drainage plans didn't exist. Given the vagueness and the uncertainty in the language being used by both sides, the fact that they can't point to, Your Honor, to a specific request for a drainage plan, we would contend means that this document was simply not responsive.
Let me ask a question because
Sure.
I'm not familiar enough with this, and this is really to both sides. So a construction file when you're doing a residential home, does that include the drainage plan, or is the drainage plan just filed with the city, or kind of what?
So, Your Honor, it's not a legal term of art that's being used, construction file. There's no statute or regulation that says these documents must be maintained. However, as a part of the permitting process with the city, you do submit these sorts of plans to the city for permitting so they can sign off on your designs, which actually occurred here. And that is why we see a payment, for example, which is an exhibit before Your Honor, a payment for engineering that went into the drainage plans. And that's why we cross-examined Mr. Zatoun, because he testified he personally went down to the city to get these documents. And we said, well, why didn't you just get the drainage plan, since you seem to have so much issues with the lack of a drainage plan? And the answer was, well, I don't know. I didn't specifically ask for that document. It seemed pretty vague and equivocal exactly why he did not get that document, which was accessible to him at the time that he went to the city. Instead, he really just produced a selection of documents that he wanted to produce from the city of Dallas. Regardless, Your Honor, it is not a term of art. They did not specifically ask for a drainage plan, and so it was not responsive. So that's just issue number one. I do have another issue about the lack of prejudice that happens here. Prejudice, the truth isn't prejudice. And what the truth is ultimately what for the court to decide. If Your Honor does believe that this document was responsive and should have been produced earlier, there is a natural breaking point in this trial, meaning that eventually we're going to be able to have our case in chief, the defendants. And Your Honor has already said that, we're not going to be able to go on to next week because of Your Honor's schedule. We are more than glad to have the other side at our own cost depose our witnesses on the topic of these drainage plans. We're more than happy to allow for an inspection of the actual physical drainage plans, which have been stamped by the city of Dallas, which are in our possession right now. We will be able to cure any possible prejudice. What we don't want to happen.
Let me ask a question I don't
Sure.
know the answer to, and it's a little confusing to me. So, Mr. Arteaga, does your side have an expert?
We do not have an expert. We simply have the builders who will be testifying to a certain extent in their expert capacity as just their experience as builders. And so we do not have an expert who has seen these plans and is going to get up and testify about these plans. But the builder, however, does have some specialized knowledge about these plans and will be testifying to it.
So let me ask then from the plaintiff, so these were part of the permitting file for the city of Dallas? That
is correct, Your Honor.
And I don't understand how the plaintiffs don't have this. How do you guys, if you went and got the permitting file, how is this not part of it?
So, Your Honor, what transpired here is you have as the exhibit that my client was referring to, Mr. Zatoun, the December 3rd documents that he got from the city of Dallas. We also, in preparation for the trial, subpoenaed the city of Dallas file and asked them to produce everything. And this was not included amongst what they produced. And so, as I'm representing to the court, we're seeing this now at trial. Counsel hasn't said when he received it, but I would also point out, Your Honor, we had earlier proceedings in March of 2020, and there was an order made that either side, if they were going to offer expert opinions, needed to provide full reports and CVs, et cetera. They've never done this. So on counsel's suggestion that they're going to put this in now that was never produced in discovery, and they apparently decided that they were going to use this.
So let me ask a question, because you kind of
Sure, Judge.
Jumped over something that I think is pretty critical here. So you subpoenaed the permitting file from the city of Dallas.
Correct.
And are we going to have a witness testify about that? Or
no, it's the city secretary certified it as being the file.
So I'm confused how this document even exists. Is it?
Honor, if I may jump in.
If I can finish, Your Honor.
Okay.
What I've been advised by the city is that because the building permit was revoked in 2019, the building plans, which I believe would include any drainage plan, but I'm not sure, they represented to me, or they advised me, this is, over a year ago, that essentially the drawings and plans were discarded, and I think they have a retention period of perhaps 6 months. I'm not exactly sure, but the point is that we, in the first instance, we've been asking since January to have the builder produce all of these documents. And Your Honor, I might also say, if Your Honor doesn't mind, can I put up one exhibit that I think is directly pertinent to the claim that there's no prejudice here? That's P31. So as you can see, Your Honor, here's an admission by Sam El-Chami that this is part of their building file. They have all of these documents, and they were not provided to my clients during the construction process, and they were not provided to us in response to Your Honor's order and in response to the Fifth Court of Appeals directing them again, nor in your subsequent order in which they were required to produce a full and complete financial file related to this project. So now here we are in the middle of the trial, and they want to put these, those two exhibits in front of us. And again, the suggestion that, we should go delay the trial and go take depositions and, try to confront their clients, now saying that they're going to, offer testimony as experts in violation of Your Honor's discovery order on expert opinions. This is just a sandbag, Your Honor. This is what's going on here.
They've made a conscious decision not to produce that document in their hands in the face of those orders.
Look, Your Honor, here is the physical document. As an officer of the court, I'm telling you, I am looking at a stamp from the city of Dallas approving drainage plans. Their entire theory of defect is no drainage plan was ever produced. And Your Honor, we're going to hear testimony that Mr. Zatoun physically looked at these plans, that these plans were maintained at his residence during the pendency of this project, and they were only given back to my clients at the end of their involvement in this project. He has absolute knowledge of this document, and we're allowed to talk about it. And for him to cherry pick documents from the city of Dallas and represent that he doesn't know what a drainage plan is and why did he not just ask for it during discovery, it's just not credible. And Your Honor, we are asking—
Mr. Artiago, when did your side get these drainage plans or get them back or whatever?
Ms. Pettit has knowledge when she got receipt of the drainage plans.
Sure. We just, as counsel, we just received them in the last, couple of days, very, very recently. I don't know when my clients received them. My understanding is that they were obtained by Mr. Zatoun and by Mr. El-Chami together in person at the city of Dallas. That the two of them went down there together to pick up these physical plans that have to be maintained at the house during construction at all times, because if a city inspector goes out there, the plans have to be on site. That's my understanding. I think that's what the testimony will be. And so they were physically on site at Mr. Zatoun's house during all of that time. I don't know exactly when they got back into my client's possession, but certainly that's something that they can be cross-examined on.
Your Honor, I would also—
and concealed from their lawyer until 2 days ago.
I'm sorry?
Well, Your Honor, to be fair, the word drainage is not in their petition. The word drainage is not in their response to request for disclosure. This trial is actually the first time that we're hearing the word drainage, which of course is why radars are going up and my clients are saying, of course there's a drainage plan, we paid for it. Everyone knows it. It was at Mr. Zatoun's house. Drainage is not even mentioned.
Until her opening statement. That's
No,
when it was first mentioned, in her opening statement.
Yes, on
She
our—
accused my clients of the turning point, which is the driveway. They brought this subject up for the first time in her opening statement so that they could call our clients liars.
Their own expert testified that the reason why the drainage was so bad was because it doesn't have a circular driveway, which these stamped plans that are in my hands show a circular driveway, and it says drainage plan. At some point, the truth has to come out. That we can't just conceal. We
Why
have.
has it been hidden from us?
Then let's admit it and have cross-examination. That's how the truth comes out. It's not by simply trying to win by default, by having incredible relevant smoking gun documents essentially being excluded when you never specifically asked for it.
Concealed by their clients until 2 days ago.
And Your Honor, I would also point out that we had 192 demands that they identify all documents from early in the case that they intended to use. They never amended any disclosures to let us know that they intended to use or the existence of this document. And based on what Ms. Pettit just said, this is apparently, according to her representation, a document that her client has had in his possession for some period of time. This is not a newly discovered document or a document that's certified by the city, as of 2 days ago. So this is a document, as Mr. Ackles just said, that they decided to withhold and not produce to us and not identify. And where the prejudice is substantial. And again, Your Honor, Mr. Ortiego's representations about what his clients will testify to concerning the drainage plan and whether it was on site, et cetera. As I showed you in P31, you see an admission by the builder that all these city-related documents were kept from the clients. They weren't provided with that.
That's not what that email says. That is not what that email says. But regardless, Your Honor, my question is let's hypothetically just assume for the sake of argument that the documents would be late produced because they are responsive. Let's just assume that RFP had been sent. That doesn't mean they get excluded as long as any prejudice can be remedied. And so my question is what is the prejudice and can it be remedied? Well, if this had been disclosed during discovery timely, what would they have done with it? They would have wanted a deposition of my client, for example. They would have perhaps wanted to inspect the original document so they can see if there's some authenticity issue. All of these things are being offered at the sole expense of my clients. So there really
wouldn't they also, though, have wanted their expert to look at this?
That is correct, Your Honor, and we are more than willing to remedy that prejudice as well. To the extent that they want their expert to look at it, the expert will have complete access to it. If there's an additional charge, even though the rules of civil procedure don't normally require this, we will actually pay for any supplemental report that the expert wanted to do and submit by a submission to Your Honor or with live testimony at the convenience of the parties. So the expert will have a chance to look at it. But Your Honor, I will make this point, is that this document was in the possession and in the express knowledge of Mr. Zatoun. He has seen it. We will provide testimony of that. And he went down to the city of Dallas to get the documents. What the expert was provided was the documents that Mr. Zatoun wanted him to look at. The expert didn't go out and verify these documents.
Let me ask a question to Mr. Scott real quick. Because you said something earlier that I'm trying to wrap my brain around. So you said that when you request the documents, and maybe I'm misunderstanding this, when you request the documents from the city of Dallas, or when the documents were requested from the city of Dallas, they told you that a lot of documents have been destroyed because the building permit had been revoked. Were all the documents destroyed or just some of the documents destroyed, or what exactly happened there?
Essentially, Your Honor, the plans and the elevations and the site plan, essentially the architectural plans, whatever the final plan was from Mr. Baskin, what was permitted, what was changed, that was not included in the file certified by the city secretary in response to our subpoena. Just to be very clear, previously, before we issued the subpoena, after my client had gotten that printout, which is a defendant's exhibit, which is dated December 3rd, 2018, which is when he went to the building department, he asked them for whatever was in their file. And I don't want to reveal what my instructions were because that would invade attorney-client privilege, but that was after he retained me. And he requested that. And the documents that came back are what you see, 18 pages, but it does not have this document that they're presenting as a drainage plan. And the actual city of Dallas certified file that was subpoenaed, which we subpoenaed the entire permit file, that we didn't in any way limit it. That file that's been certified by the city secretary does not include this drainage plan, does not include the site plan, does not include whatever house was actually permitted or any amendments or changes. So the drawings, the site plans, the elevations, and it was previously explained to me.
Let me ask this, were the El Chamis ever deposed in this case?
They were not,
No,
Your Honor.
not a single person was deposed in this case, Your Honor.
Okay. I was going to see if they had been asked about these drainage plans and if they testified it. So nobody was deposed. That would make this a little easier.
Yeah.
Your Honor,
I also, Your Honor,
Here's the problem with that prejudice, Your Honor. He wants to open up discovery. And remember, we're in amber. And remember, they've beaten us up in this lawsuit since September, saying discovery closed in August. This is all part of the design to buy a continuance. That's all
We
this
don't-
is. How
We
can-
don't want a continuance.
How can the Zatoon, how can the El Chamis have this and no telling what else they have in their files since they hadn't been out that house since 2018 and not give it to their lawyer until 2 days ago? That's unbelievable in the face of your orders, the Court of Appeals orders. I'm sure
Yeah.
instructions from counsel produced.
What we just heard was that the city apparently destroys documents upon a revocation of a permit, which occurred, of course, in in 2019, early 2019. What we heard testimony earlier in this case from Mr. Zatoon was that in December of 2018, he physically went down to the city of Dallas to inspect the building file. So based off of that, there's a clear inference that this document still existed and he chose not to get it. So I just don't see how we get around the fact that this is a document that clearly impeaches prior testimony, that it is relevant, that we're offering to allow them to inspect, to do depositions if they want to prior to us admitting it as a formal exhibit. But the truth isn't prejudice. I can't keep saying that enough. You can't, your entire theory is that these plans.
I get that, but also you have a duty to disclose documents that are requested. I
understand.
Your Honor, the only thing, if I may add, first of all, I've never heard that the city destroys documents when a permit is revoked. I've never heard. So I'll be interested, I guess, to follow up on Mr. Scott's representation to the court that he thinks this was somehow destroyed. Second, a permit file does not necessarily equal a drainage file. So his request to the city to ask for a permit file doesn't mean that they're going to put a drainage plan in there. Just like us, they may not have interpreted that the same way. This is a government document. It's publicly available. It's equally accessible to both sides at the city of Dallas. I don't think there's any way that the entire file that the city of Dallas has is this 18 pages that came back. Just because he sent a subpoena for a permit file and it came back with 17 pages doesn't mean that this document was destroyed.
Why was it concealed for 2 years?
It wasn't concealed. You didn't depose him. You didn't specifically ask for a drainage plan. It is right here in front of everybody in open court to look at, and we're offering to cure any possible prejudice at our expense. What we don't want to have is for the court to make a decision saying, well, no drainage plan actually was created, when we have a stamped and filed drainage plan in our possession, which we have advised everybody of and are willing to cure any possible prejudice for at our own expense.
So you withheld it because of your.
We did not withhold anything, Mr. Ackles. Excuse me. Well, why should I hear you mischaracterize?
No. Shh. One at a time, Mr. Artiago.
Yes. Nothing was concealed. Nothing was hidden. The emails that they're talking about doesn't say we have a drainage plan, but we're not going to give it to you. Not one of their RFP says, give us a drainage plan. So to the extent it was responsive, it is an honest mistake on a misinterpretation of what legal language is. Now, Your Honor, I do plaintiff's work a lot. I understand the frustration of the other side. I understand the court's hesitancy about that. And that is why we are bending over backwards to do whatever it takes to pay off whatever cost it has to cure any possible prejudice. Whatever Your Honor is willing to give the other side in fairness, including supplemental expert reports, if that's what they want to do, though I'm not sure if that would be necessary, but if they want to do it, we'll do it, again, at our expense. We just can't exclude this type of document given its relevance in this case. So whatever Your Honor wants to do in terms of that.
Let me ask one other kind of logistics question, I guess, is this document you have, do you only have a hard copy or do you also have an electronic copy?
Our,
We-
electron, go ahead, Julie.
Yeah, the document that I pulled up during Mr. Zatoon's testimony, we had, Annie in our office had some sort of app where you can take a photo of a big thing. So we have it electronically that she made for us in a PDF form.
Can I respond to Mr. Ortega, Your Honor?
Sure.
Your Honor, I don't believe these two lawyers consciously withheld this document because I don't think they knew about it until 2 days ago based on Ms. Pettit's representations. I believe them. That means their client withheld this document from them. No telling what else he's withheld because they produced 0 documents inconsistent with your order of in May. So their client made the decision that the term construction file, and by the way, that request doesn't just say construction file, it says project file, construction file / project file. Their client made his own decision that request is so broad he doesn't have to turn over this to his lawyers. That's beyond belief.
Remind me again, so no documents were produced by the plaintiffs at all in this case, ever?
No, we did
it's not
produce
true, Your
documents.
Honor. It's not true.
Jonathan will have to speak to that, Your Honor.
Yeah, I'll be happy to address that, Judge. None of the project-related documents were produced that's responsive to what we're showing you on item 1, the complete construction project file for this project. That not only weren't they produced, they brought the mandamus against Your Honor saying that they shouldn't have to produce them.
No, the mandamus was for the financial records. The construction project file, we did produce some of those documents. They're on everyone's exhibit list, but obviously was not produced was the drainage plan, which everyone's arguing about. That was not produced.
What documents were produced, I guess?
Your Honor, there are like all of the emails that we've been using during this case so far and during my opening were produced. All of those plans that we've had up attached to emails. So what my clients produced is I think it's exhibit 92, all of the checks. The reason why this is not a normal, if you were talking about a normal file where there is a straight up builder and a straight up homeowner, you're going to have a very different file than a situation where someone's building a house for a friend. They just didn't keep the types of books and records that you would if you're doing a normal build. We've got emails, we've got checks, we have produced to them everything that we had. Now, you have to understand that from my client's perspective, this wasn't some sort of malicious thing. Why in the world would they have any incentive to hold on to some silly drainage plans? They've got no incentive to keep this from Your Honor. If anything, this, you know.
Let me ask one other question, and this is pretty important, I guess. There was an expert report by Mr. No, I'm blanking on his name. Mr. Hart. In this case, does it reference that there was no drainage plan in that report?
No, he didn't make any reference to any absence of a drainage plan. He made reference to what the actual site conditions were and commented about the causes of the house having water penetration. And again, with regard to this drainage plan, as far as we can tell, we've never seen the original. We don't know the date on it. We don't, as far as I know, there is no certification from the city of Dallas that this is a proper record. And I just also want to correct one other thing. I'd like to put up, Your Honor, P6 is the actual file that was produced by the city of Dallas. So counsel said to you before, 18 pages, that can't be the file. This is what we received from the city of Dallas. And I've spoke to the assistant city attorney, and they said that I double checked with them. They said, these are all the records that they have. These are the records. And she was actually going to go back and check again. I haven't heard back from her, but I certainly could follow up. But again, on the prejudice point, Your Honor, this is not merely a matter of being able to have our expert during the trial, which is problematic in and of itself, go and look at this new document, but it also is going to potentially involve the need to go and do site visits and investigations to determine whether or not whatever is in the approved drainage plan, they're saying was the approved drainage plan, in fact was implemented.
I guess I was kind of surprised by your answer. So your expert never opined about the drainage plan or the lack of a drainage plan or the fact he never got a drainage plan anywhere in his report. Is that right?
That's how I remember it, Judge. It's 50 pages, but I would point out that as we went over the punch list report, this was among the things that we asked them for back in March of 2019. So council wants to tell you there's
I mean,
some.
that's not discovery though. Okay, this is a tough call. I have to be honest, because it does concern me. This wasn't produced, but then there is some gray area here. Was it actually requested? And it does seem to be a critical document. I was assuming that the expert would have included this in his report, and I could say, look, you should have known about it if it was included in the report. But if it's not in the report, I think that makes this, again, an even grayer area. So I'm going to, I guess that, well, this exhibit hasn't been offered, but I am going to allow this exhibit, potentially allow this exhibit to come in. I'm going to let the plaintiff's attorneys at the defendant's expense, I guess, redepose who? The El Chamis, or the El Chamis haven't been deposed? Who are you proposing be deposed? Who's going to testify about this, I guess?
The El Chamis are prepared to testify about these plans.
Both of them or just one of them?
Both of them, but both of them have different types of knowledge regarding the plans. So for example, Mr. Sam El Chami, who's the father, he was the one who was physically going to the city with the Zatoons, with the plans, et cetera. But Dylan also looked at the plans and worked with the El Chamis with the budgets and things like that. So both of them would have knowledge about these plans.
All right, I'm going to allow the plaintiffs to depose both the El Chamis about these plans. I'm going to allow there to be a supplemental expert report on this that will not be at and supplemental opinions about this by the expert. Is this expert, Mr. Hart, is he qualified to testify about drainage plans? I think he said he was, didn't he?
To a degree, but we also have a second expert, Tom Witherspoon, who's a professional engineer, who would probably also be addressing this. So they're upending all the work that we've done, up to trial.
Does Mr. Witherspoon testify at all about the lack of a drainage plan, or does that in his report?
No, I don't believe so, Your Honor. I don't think it's identified in that fashion. As far as as far as I remember, to the best of my recollection, there is no reference to, there's no opinion being expressed that it's because of a lack of a drainage plan that there's, injury that's being caused. That opinion hasn't been expressed by the experts in this case. What I expect is consistent with their reports. Now that there's this, this piece of paper, that there's a bunch of work that needs to be done. But another concern here, Your Honor, or one clarification I would ask for is, first of all, who's going to pay for the cost of our time and the cost of the court reporter to go and depose the El Chamis if we elect to do that, and two expert witnesses, and furthermore, Your Honor, with respect to that this is not a way that they can suddenly become expert witnesses in this case, because we litigated that issue already, and Your Honor had made an order in March. It specifically delineated that if any expert opinions were to be expressed, that it required that there be an exchange by a certain date of full expert reports. We never got anything from the El Chamis. No CV, no report, nothing in compliance with Your Honor's order.
That's a whole separate issue.
Yeah.
Well, I heard Mr. Ortega offer to pay for our expert to supplement his report.
That is correct. We're willing to do that now.
This is what I'm going to allow. I'm going to allow a 1 hour deposition of each of the El Chamis on the issue of this plan. And is there any other documents? I want to make this, I don't want this to happen again. Are there any other documents that the plaintiffs have that they haven't included on the exhibit list that they want to kind of bring up during trial that we don't know about? Because this is,
So, Your Honor, the plans that I have in my possession, and I'm not an expert, and so that's why I'm a little bit uncertain. The first page of the plan, it says drainage plans, but there's a number of similar type plans underneath it. I don't know if these are related to the drainage plans or if they're similar other types of building plans. But what I have in my possession are essentially building and drainage plans that, of course, will be given up to the inspection of the plaintiff's counsel when at their choosing.
you have all of those pages in.
Well, they're physical, and I believe.
Do you have all those in electronic format or just
Yes,
the
Your
first
Honor.
page?
Yes, Your Honor, we do.
Okay.
Judge, you had asked if there's anything else that the defendants want to use, and I didn't hear an answer to that, but I would like to answer this question. Is there anything else, period, that Messrs. El Chami have not given their lawyers contained in their construction of
I
project?
assume this is the only, these documents, these plans that you have in your hand, Mr. Artiaga, are the only documents that have not already been produced that you guys are intending to offer in trial. I don't want, this is, or is there, I don't want this to happen again.
Well, my request is broader than that, Your Honor. What other documents are they withholding? Their clients withholding from their lawyers?
We weren't the attorneys in charge of discovery, and so I wish I could, I hesitate to say or certify to the court because it's not like I dug through everyone's inbox. So all I can tell you is that we're sort of trying the case that we have, and as far as I know, there aren't a hidden catch of documents that we're hiding.
So answer my question.
Yes. So the answer is, Your Honor, and is that there is no intent for any other document at this point, with the one caveat is that this is a pre-admitted document that we saw earlier on, which is the email from Mr. Zatoun, apparently or seeming to draft the contract. And we had said we would produce a native file because there was some issue of the authenticity.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. That's no problem.
And Julie, go ahead.
How would you like us to produce that to Your Honor and the court reporter and opposing counsel? We have the native.
You don't need to produce it to me. You can produce it to the other side. But so let's deal with one issue at a time. No more interruptions. This is what I'm going to do. One, the defendants will have the opportunity to take the deposition, 1 hour deposition on the issue of all of these plans, not just all the plans that are being produced by Mr. Artiago that has in his hand that we've been discussing. A 1 hour deposition as to each. If it turns out that you need more than an hour because there's more plans, I thought it was just a drainage plan, but if you need more than that, Mr. Artiago or Ms. Pettit, I'd urge you to be flexible if they're asking questions specifically about those plans. So it could go over an hour, and I'm going to require that for each of those hour depositions that the defendant pay for the depositions, for the court reporting time, and for up to an hour of attorney time for Mr. Scott or Mr. Ackles, whoever takes the deposition. I'm going to allow Mr. Witherspoon and Mr. Hart to supplement their reports if necessary with these plans. I will allow up to 1 hour of expert time on that to be billed for each expert to the defendants. These reports also, these plans need to be provided in electronic format. If your experts need to see the actual physical copy of that, I'm open to suggestion on how to deal with that issue. I'm not exactly sure how to deal with that issue.
Just have them make them available.
Yeah, that's fine. We'll send the PDFs, which are pretty legible actually, but yeah, we'll make them available at our office. That's fine.
Okay, well, I want you to, obviously be careful because we're in the middle of a very horrible pandemic. So be careful about that. And if the experts don't feel comfortable doing that, I know Mr. Hart is part of the vulnerable population. you may need to make copies and provide those to him if he wants that, an actual physical copy, but we can deal with that. As to questioning Mr. Zatoun about this or any other witness, I don't want any witnesses to be questioned about these documents until these have been produced. So you're going to need to kind of put that off until these documents have been shared. I think that's everything. Anybody have a question about that order? And then Mr. Artiago, I want you to draft that order, provide it to Mr. Scott, and then give me a copy of that order.
We need a deadline, Your Honor, and also, what are we going to do? We're going to continue on without trial right now.
I would suggest we continue on if you want to, but if Mr. Ackles, Mr. Scott, you want to delay this, and we could reconvene the trial on. And again, I'm not suggesting this, but just to accommodate, I understand if you would want to do this, I could reconvene the trial on January 19th at 1:30.
I actually have a conflict, Your Honor, on the 19th, but
Okay.
Your Honor, would it be possible for Mr. Ackles and I to confer for 5 minutes privately?
Sure, absolutely. Do you want me to put you into a breakout room, or how do you want to do
If you
this?
could please do that, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you want me to send your client as well?
Yes, please.
So he's gonna send us to another room to just hang tight.
I'm just putting Aaron Zatoun, right? There's Aaron Zatoun, Joe Ackles, and Jonathan Scott. That's the only people I'm moving, correct?
Yes, that's correct, Your Honor.
All right. And then you can re-enter the room when you want through the leave room function in there.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Did you get an invitation?
Yeah.